If you think that fluoride is safe and effective, why the hell would you dump it in the water? The difference between medicine and poison is the dosage. How do you control dosage when you just mass dump it into the water? Some people are going to get too little. Some people are going to get too much. You can't control the dosage as you dump it into the water. It shows that they're not interested in health whatsoever. Nevertheless, as you look at this article talking about this promise of vaccines and how they're going to do everything. They're going to cure cancer even. Eventually, she said, they hope to use it to prevent cancer entirely, so we can make everybody get this from Merck, right, or whoever it is that's selling this. It's supposed to just be off the shelf, kind of similar to when you get the flu shot. Okay. Now I'm really not interested. I don't know. I've seen more promising results from people that were using worming medication. I'm serious. Look it up. If you or somebody in your family has cancer, that's at least worth a try. But it goes on from there because vaccines are supposed to be the panacea for every disease. Why do you think that is? I'm sure that it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that 33 years ago, all the pharmaceutical companies were given total legal immunity for any adverse effects, damage, death due to vaccines, right? That has absolutely nothing to do with why they only want to offer us vaccines as treatment now, right? I mean, these people are looking at big lawsuits for a lot of different products. They'll do their trials, and they will turn it over to the FDA, and the FDA will give them approval, which helps them in their liability charges. But I've personally known people who have lost loved ones to FDA-approved drugs, sued, and won. It's difficult to do that when the FDA says it's okay, and then eventually the FDA pulled their authorization for that after they did a little bit more studying, or after the problems became so widespread. It's not that they were really concerned, did the studying, it's just that it became such a widespread issue that they had to go ahead and ban it to maintain their little bit of credibility that they have. And so when we look at the FDA and this shameful organization for which there is no constitutional authority, this shameful organization that basically gives a rubber stamp to dangerous drugs and then may remove them after a while if there's enough lawsuits. The federal government, again, has given complete immunity for any problems that are caused by vaccines. So everything is focusing on a vaccine, but now they've got a new novel approach for vaccines. I give a shout out to Mark Hall for sending this to me. Biometricupdate.com. ID 2020 and their partners launch a program to provide digital ID with vaccines. Oh, there we go. Boy, I tell you, it's just all converging, isn't it? The two big dreams of government, to vaccinate everybody and to give everybody a digital ID. They just come together all of a sudden there. A program called ID 2020. Now, this is something that was announced at an annual summit of the ID 2020 Alliance. They have a digital identity program. ID 2020, by the way, if you haven't heard of these people, and I hadn't heard of them before either, they are focused on giving everybody on the planet a digital ID. Isn't that great? And it is an alliance of corporations and governments. Oh, gee, that's unusual, isn't it? That big multinational corporations would join with government in a public-private partnership to turn us into slaves? Because that's what this is about. Now, ID 2020 doesn't put it out that way. You go to their website, and it says, we believe that identity is a human right and that individuals must have, quote-unquote, ownership. They put it in air quotes there because you're not going to be owning that identity. Individuals must have ownership over their own identity. Now, if you believe that these governments and corporations are going to give you ownership over your identity once they give you a digital global ID, go back and take a look at George Orwell. I mean, this is worthy of the slogans that came out of 1984. You know, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And so to that, we can now add global digital ID equals privacy. And vaccines equal health. And surveillance equals human rights. You must embrace the doublethink. And I'm going to break this down into more detail about how they choose to get digital ID from vaccines. Of course, they're rolling this out in India first. They go to the big population centers where people are very poor. But guess who one of the partners is here in America? The premier partner, Austin, Texas. All right, so I'm looking at biometricupdate.com. And, of course, this is part of the biometric industrial complex. They talk about things, other articles that they have, or ID for all, biometrics and digital ID initiatives in developing nations. True Face Biometrics to help identify and reunite Hurricane Dorian victims. Oh, they've got an app for everything, don't they? And this is really, the biometric industrial complex is really a component of what I refer to as the police state, surveillance state complex. There's a lot of money to be made off of this. And this is the trade organization, one of them. There's many of them. So you can find biometric news, biometric stocks, ID for all. They got a section for that, ID for all. This is, I look at this, ID for all. It just goes back to the Prisoner series of Patrick McGowan, where everywhere you turn, and it looks so clumsy and cartoonish today. It was pretty dystopian when it first came out back in the 1960s. Again, Patrick McGowan, the guy who was secret agent man, it was Danger Man in the UK. And then he produced this series. Somebody who decides that he's had enough with all of this spy games, he resigns. He gets gassed and kidnapped and taken to an island where they're playing mind games, psyops with him all the time, watching everything that he does. And that dystopian nightmare is now far, far more real and detailed than anything that could be imagined back in the 1960s. And this is one example of it, the ID 2020 Alliance. And this is an alliance to make sure that everybody in the world has a digital identity. And again, as I was pointing out, they have a belief that identity is a human right. See, you're having a digital global ID number is not a violation of your human rights, so that they can measure you and monitor you everywhere and everything that you do. No. That is your fundamental right. And you should, quote unquote, own it. They put ownership in quotes. Because nobody believes that you're going to own your digitally assigned global ID, do you? Do you really believe that? Folks, this is a slave tattoo that they're giving you. This is why these people want to get you upset about slavery, about Christopher Columbus Day and so forth, because they don't want you to see the coming slavery that they're already rolling out and profiting over. These people, I guess, the biometric industrial complex, they would essentially be part of the overseers, right, who get to boss us slaves around. Literally overseers. They're watching everything that we do. This is being rolled out. Again, they talked about it at their annual summit in New York, along with the government of Bangladesh and the Vaccine Alliance, Gavi. And what they're doing here with this is they're combining mandatory vaccines with mandatory global digital IDs. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, somebody in a lot of people in government are just really excited about this. Just like they're going to be combining your mobility in the vehicles that they own with surveillance as well. Everything comes back to surveillance, identification, and control. They say the program to leverage immunization as an opportunity to establish digital identity. I mean, they don't even try to hide it. They do lie to you about the fact that you're going to have that as a, this is going to be your own private thing here, right? How could it be private? How could they even use it if you control it? See, that, it doesn't, you have to believe in the kind of Orwellian cognitive dissonance that were in all those slogans I just mentioned. To even believe that a digital ID would be of any use to anyone if it was something that you held privately. There's absolutely no way. How could they verify it? Well, that's not the plan. They may gaslight you with some information, but that is not the plan whatsoever. They can talk about, well, we can do this and keep this anonymous and you can keep control of it and so forth. Yeah, we'll just talk to William Binney about that. You don't think that these people will put a backdoor in? You don't think they'll buy off a contractor? You don't think they'll just go out and steal it, even if they don't crack it? Anyway, it was unveiled by ID 2020 in partnership with the Bangladesh government's Access to Information program. And, of course, where we're seeing these, isn't it interesting that where we're seeing these things rolled out at first are in the two countries that have the largest populations, India and China, where the people don't have that much awareness. Well, I don't know. Maybe they've got more awareness than we do. Certainly the people in Hong Kong have got a lot more awareness than we do of the privacy issues. But they don't have as much money, so it's more difficult. The less money that you have, the more difficult it is for you to fight these kinds of political movements because you're busy putting bread on the table. And that's one of the reasons why they go to these high population, poor countries like India and China. They said it gives them they're implementing a forward-looking approach to digital identity that gives individuals control over their own personal information. Yeah, I've got a bridge to sell you with that as well. And they've got some vaccines to sell you as well. Gavi CEO Seth Berkley says that 89% of children and adolescents who do not have identification live in countries where the organization is active. So we're very enthusiastic about the potential impact of this program, combining vaccines with a global digital identity. They said it's something that we can replicate across all Gavi-eligible countries and close the identity gap. That is something that they refer to over and over again, closing the identity gap. I'm sure that all these people who are living in impoverished areas of India and Africa, they're going to manage their own crypto keys to make sure that nobody barcodes them like a slave in a concentration camp. That's what this really is, folks. Let's just understand that. A partnership was formed between Gavi, NEC, there's your big corporations, and other corporations, Simprints, to use biometrics to improve vaccine coverage. Digital ID is being defined and implemented today, and the importance of swift action to close the identity gap. There's that phrase again, the identity gap. Isn't that funny? We have these different gaps. We had a space missile, space program gap. We had a nuclear weapons gap, and they always use it in the context of competition and war. When they want to put identity on the population and they start talking about an identity gap, do you realize that this is a war being conducted by authoritarian governments? And that's pretty much every one of the governments today throughout the world. By authoritarian governments is a war by authoritarian governments against the people. That's the gap. They got to close that gap. The gap is always about control. And guess who their partners are in the United States? Well, we have UC Berkeley and the city of Austin. The city of Austin is actually a bigger partner than UC Berkeley. City of Austin, several other partners, are working together with homeless people and service providers who engage with them to develop a blockchain-enabled digital identity platform called MyPass to empower homeless people within their own identity data. So there we go. We create a homeless crisis here in Austin. Very well documented. I mean, we've caught up to California in many regards here in Austin. And these Democrats here in Austin create a problem, a homeless problem, and then they say, we've got a solution for you. Identity. We'll give you a digital identity to empower you, of course. And we also have conservatives who are using the collapse of our border. We're so concerned about the Kurds and the Syrian border with Turkey and so forth. We're very, very concerned about that border. When's the last time you heard anybody in the media, including Fox, talk about our border? Well, they do when they want to scare you into accepting a national identity. That's what they're going to use it for. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Well, as a headline from Zero Hedge says, when talking about China's social credit system, it's not a game when it's real life. Yeah, it's no longer. This is the end game, folks, for social media and for the internet, the way that it was designed. And I've been telling you this. I do it on almost a daily basis. That's why I'm going to set up my website to put this out once and for all. So not to continue to repeat it, I'll just refer to you to the website if you want to get the background information about how this all rolled out since the 1960s as a PSYOP application, as population control. And it is. That's exactly what this is. They make it kind of a game. Oh, it's fun. Look, we'll create Big Brother reality TV programs, and then everybody sees that, and it's like, whoa, well, you know, if I put all this stuff out there about myself, these people who are on these reality TV programs, they're nothing. I could be a celebrity, too, if I get a lot of people to follow me, and if I do crazy, stupid stuff, and if I can get people to follow me, then I can be a celebrity as well. And so everybody starts putting everything about themselves into LifeLog. DARPA's LifeLog. I'm sorry, it's now called Facebook. Yeah, they changed the name. That's right. When DARPA stopped LifeLog, the day that Facebook began, nothing, it's just a coincidence, right? Nothing to see there, just move on. And yet, when we look at how this is being used, as I pointed out, we've got a program, an alliance called ID 2020. These partners believe that identity is a human right, and so they're going to take that away from you. Because they want to take away every human right from you. They want to enslave you. So come and get your concentration camp tattoo. But they don't have to do it physically. They have other ways to do it. They don't actually have to, tattoo it on your arm now. They can essentially ID you by your walk, by your talk, by your face, by everything about you. Not just fingerprints, even your walk. And so when you look at the manifesto of this organization, understand ID 2020 has allied itself with another organization that is an alliance of governments and corporations as well, called Gavi, and they want to make sure that they combine vaccines with a global digital ID, because we need to know who you refusenicks are out there. All you who refuse to get vaccines, we've got to identify you. We know, okay, this guy's okay. Oh, red flag, this guy's not vaccinated. Grab him and his family, stick them in a camp, right? Or deny them access, just as you see social credit scores in China. Well, this will be your vaccine credit score. And so you've got the alliance of ID 2020, the biometric people, the Gavi people that want to vaccinate everybody. And they're working with communist governments like the city of Austin here. And how do they apply this? Well, they're going to do this in order to help homeless people in Austin and stateless people worldwide. Those are the people that we have to do this for. And when you look at their manifesto, they have a manifesto, these people, the ID 2020 Alliance, they have a manifesto. Not only do they want to give everybody in the world a digital identity, but they've got a manifesto about it as well. This is part of it. Individuals need a trusted, verifiable way to prove who they are. Why do I need that? Why do I need that? In both the physical world and online. As I've said many times, when you look at what Google is doing on YouTube, how they're rigging search engines and so forth, when you look at the manipulation in cyberspace, understand that these same corporations, especially Google, they've already got their test case going in Toronto, Sidewalk Labs. They're moving from cyberspace to physical space, just like these people said. You've got to be identified, and you need a trusted, verifiable way to prove who you are in the physical world as well as in the online world. Why do I need that? Well, because the government says so, right? When have we ever had that kind of obsession with proving who we are? I've got a story that was told to me by my mother many times. She was very impressed with it. When she went to get her marriage license, they went in, and the person who was going to grant that, she went in with her father, my grandfather. And the person said, where's your birth certificate? And he said, she doesn't have one. She was born at home. And the bureaucrat said, well, how do I know that? How can I verify that? And my grandfather got in her face and said, because I told you so. You calling me a liar? She backed down. They wouldn't back down today, of course. And today we have to prove everything to our masters. That's the world that we live in now. Do you want to continue to live in that world? I don't. We don't have to live in that world. You know, that's the spoiler alert here. That's the final message of The Prisoner series that I referred to. At the very end, you know, he always talks to number 2. He's assigned the number 6. And at the very end of Patrick McGowan's series, The Prisoner, it turns out that number 1 is himself. We're slaves to these people because we let them enslave us. And we need to understand that we don't have to give them that power. But they go through this manifesto, they say, well, over 1 billion people worldwide are unable to prove their identity. Who cares? Again, who wants to know my identity? The governments want to know my identity. You prove your authority to me first. You prove that you're following the Constitution that gives you your authority first. Then maybe I'll tell you about my identity. For some, including refugees, the stateless, and other marginalized groups, right? We got to help these people. We got to give them an identity because otherwise they're excluded and they don't have access to all of these systems, all these welfare systems. See, that's really what it's about. It's about empowering government and about empowering the bureaucratic welfare state, funding that, right? That's what they want here in Austin. Well, you know, we give these people, homeless people, identities, and then we can, use that card and we can ramp up the amount of money that we're getting from the federal government because they're the ones who are incentivizing all this. And then, of course, this is a way for them to, yet again, transcend. You have to understand, this is a global agenda. It's a UN agenda. The hundreds of millions of people that they say are stateless, that are just floating around, all the refugees and everything. This is by design. And as they continue to do this, conservatives are increasingly demanding that they be given an identity card to distinguish themselves from these other people. Well, they don't see a distinction between an American and a quote-unquote stateless person, because if you have a government that is global, then all the citizens are global. And that's the whole point of this. So you keep begging for E-Verify, all you conservatives, and you're going to get it good and hard. It's not going to just stop with you having to get permission from Washington to get a job. It's going to be applied to everything in your life, and you're begging for it now because they've got you freaked out about the border that they have intentionally collapsed. It is a bipartisan effort, and President Trump hasn't done a thing about it. He's set aside while the border has collapsed. You got to understand, it's Republicans and Democrats, the establishment, as well as Trump, letting this go. The only thing they're going to offer us as a carrot is E-Verify and some kind of a identity card to make you feel like you belong to America. We do not underestimate the risks, they say, of data misuse and abuse, particularly when digital identity systems are designed as large, centralized databases. Well, what point would it be if you didn't enter it in at some point into a large, centralized database? All these homeless people on the streets of Austin given a MyPass. And then how are they going to use that? Well, they're going to scan it, and it's going to go into a large, centralized database. Now, of course, that could be hacked, but more than likely, they're going to leave themselves a backdoor into it by design, or you're going to have theft, or you're going to have corrupt governments and corporations who find that they have other uses for this information. All right, folks, so we've been telling you this for a long time. I've got more to say about how they're going to roll this out. The Safe Drivers Act, I haven't even gotten to yet. I want to get to that. We're going to talk about how even Saturday Night Live is mocking the LGBT equity or equality town hall that CNN had. They did that in their cold opening on Saturday. It was so pathetic. That's why I say CNN is doing everything they can to keep that kind of quiet. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the coup. We'll talk about Syria. All of that is coming up. But folks, if you want to keep us on air, it's vital to continue your support. You've been very good about supporting us, even as Apple and these other people have shown themselves to be willing accomplices to the Chinese authoritarian government. They'll do anything any government tells them, including the American government, to shut down free speech and everything else. Well, we're still here, and we're still here because of your support, and we have dropped prices at InfoWars Store, down 40 to 70% off of dozens of products. We got Survival Shield X3, nascent iodine, 2-ounce bottle, 70% off. Take a look at the specials we have. 50% off most of the products, at least, all with free shipping and double Patriot points. That's InfoWarsStore.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I've been talking about this alliance to combine vaccination with a global digital ID. And, of course, it's not just going to be for use online, but it'll be used, as they are quite out front about, it'll be used in the physical world. Everybody has to have one of these. It's a basic human right to be identified by your governments like a slave and to be vaccinated on their demand. And they have to be able to identify who it is that is vaccinated and who isn't. And we've talked about the ID 2020 Alliance, the people who are pushing the global digital ID very hard. It's an organization that is a combination of governments, primarily in the third world right now. India, China, these other countries are signing in on this first. Big corporations like NEC and so forth in that. And then there's the other partner there, the vaccine side. That's Gavi. Gavi is an organization that is heavily funded by the Gates Foundation. What a surprise! Bill and Melinda Gates. You know, the thing that is so dear to their heart besides Planned Parenthood is mass vaccination. They just love population control and soft kill. And they were one of the founding partners of Gavi. Now, they've given them $125 million in matching funds. So you donate and they'll match that up to $125 million. And all that's been matched so far, except for about $11 million. How about that? And they have been doing this since 2000. They've had multiple phases. Right now, we're in phase 4. You know, it's kind of interesting. They have 5-year plans. Let's see. Where have I heard that before? Oh, the Soviet Union, Mao, all these communist governments or central planning committees, they always have a 5-year plan. Yeah, and so we're in the middle of phase 4, their 5-year plan, which is 2016 to 2020. And, of course, they want to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated, especially in those third world countries, because, you know, there's just too many of them. And they're a little bit too healthy, perhaps, you know, living off the land. We can't have that. I mean, we got to get them hooked up. We got to get them on the internet where they're zombified. We got to start feeding them junk food, vaccinating them and so forth, and watch their birth rates go down. Because, you know, you just can't have Planned Parenthood on every corner in Africa, right? You can in America. You can do that throughout all the black neighborhoods in America. That was the goal of the Gates family and the Bush family. Prescott Bush, the patriarch of the Klan. The guy who was a senator, the father of George H.W. Bush. Prescott Bush was the original treasurer of Planned Parenthood. His name was right there up on the letterhead with Margaret Sanger, the eugenicist. And these people just always keep coming back to that. So what is the next thing that is going to roll out on this? Well, as they're looking at every possible way that they can watch your every movement and control your every movement, and make your every movement done only if they permit it. Well, they're coming after you in terms of your ability to own a private car and to operate it anonymously and freely. And so we now have a congressman out of Massachusetts has introduced what he calls the Safe Drivers Act. This is a congressional bill, H.R. 4531. So if you ever contacted your member of Congress and told them how you felt about something, contact them about this. Safe Drivers Act is designed for one purpose, and that is to share everything that you have ever done in a car with law enforcement nationwide. And I would also report, you know, with the insurance companies as well. Because as I was saying before, they may come along and just ban cars outright, like they're doing in Europe now, city after city. And I would expect that in California they can get away with doing that. However, in the rest of the country, what they will do is they'll take the approach they've taken to guns, and that is infringing on them one slice at a time. It'll be a death by 1,000 cuts. And the way that they kill your rights is to turn them into privileges. One slice, one cut at a time. We'll be right back to tell you more about the Safe Drivers Act. I've got to ask, what kind of an idiot running for office would do a photo op to introduce new legislation outside of the DMV? This is what Congressman Moulton did in introducing H.R. 4531. It's like, how do you process? How does anybody vote for these kinds of Democrats, these kind of people? Look, I'm here at the DMV, and I've got some new regulations for you. Vote for me. And they do. Or at least we're told they do. Maybe they're just stuffing the ballots there because it's so corrupt. You know, the DMV, everybody's favorite bureaucracy, the people that were portrayed by Disney in an animated film is when they had all the, what was the name? I can't remember the name of that film. I just saw the trailer for it. But the part where they had everybody in the DMV was portrayed by sloths. What was it, Zoopolis or something like that? Yeah, Zootopia, yeah. And so you go to the DMV, and everybody there is a sloth, and they're just moving so incredibly slow. So, yeah, we need more of that, says the congressman from Massachusetts. Vote for him as part of his reelection bid, I guess. So he goes to the Danvers, Massachusetts branch. They call it the Registry of Motor Vehicles. He did it last Tuesday. Seth Moulton. He filed this, he says, in hopes of making it easier for traffic safety officials to share information about drivers across state lines. So just like the National Gun Registry, right? We've got to register all gun owners. Why? Oh, keep you safe, right? Well, now we've got to register all car owners. Why? Oh, to keep you safe. So many times as you've had individuals talk about, people within the Second Amendment group will say, why are you talking about registering us? I mean, we got 30,000 people here die every year from car accidents, and you're not talking about registering cars. And I said, for years, shut up. They're going to do it. They're going to use that. They're going to do that. Stop begging for that. And that's what they're doing now. So we got to register all drivers, just like we've got to register all gun owners. We've got to register everybody who speaks out on social media. We've got to assign them social demerits if they say the wrong things on social media. And if you do or the wrong things with your car, and they will define what the wrong things are. You speed up too quickly, you brake too much, you change lanes too often, you drive too much. Well, we're just going to have to stop you from doing that. You drive too much. You're going to cause the sky to fall or something like that. I can't have kids, says Occasional Cortex, because you're driving your car too much. So drive more. You don't want to have her have any kids. Moulton plans to make it easier to share everybody's personal information with law enforcement everywhere in the world. The ultimate goal of the bill, writes the local station there in Massachusetts, the ultimate goal of the bill is to help lead to the creation of a national real-time data sharing program, according to the congressman's office. And, of course, they just don't know enough about us yet. We've been told for the longest time that driving is a privilege, traveling is a privilege, and they will grant that privilege to you if you're a good little boy or girl. And if you aren't, they will take it away, just like social credit scores. And they have point systems for that and so forth. So Salem News revealed that the bill would incentivize states into creating a national real-time driver sharing program. This is a big pot of gold on the other end of the federal rainbow. And it's a bottomless pot because they don't ever have to account for it. They got the petrodollar and they can just keep printing money. And when they print that money, they can hand it out to people to incentivize your behavior. And the states are real eager to have that. And the corporations are real eager to sell all the tracking devices that will be there in your car, outside of your car. Well, they've been talking about this for quite some time. You have the Department of Transportation under Obama was talking about talking cars. And I covered that when they were here in Austin. And, of course, what they're going to be talking about is you. Everything that you do. Oh, by the way, did I tell you that that David did this in his car and he did that in his car? And, that is behavior that we don't like to see happening here. We'll have to charge him more. Maybe we'll take away his license or whatever. There you go, talking cars. And they're going to be talking to you. You're also going to have talking highways, and they'll be talking about you as well. They'll be watching you. Your car will be watching you, already is. If you don't know it, it's already watching you. But they're just going to incentivize this more. They're going to give out $50 million in competitive grant programs. Oh, you're going to have to compete to get that money. How good of a snitch, how much of a Stasi highway can you build? Oh, we like your Stasi design. We'll give you even more money. And it will be grants that will come out of the U.S. Department of Transportation, an organization like the FDA for which there is no constitutional authority. And so, as Zero Hedge points out, one has to ask, why would states need bribes of grant money to help them to create a national driver surveillance program? Well, they want to do it anyway, right? They'll give law enforcement access to any videos of an accident the driver was involved in. So this is going to be a complete surveillance system focused on the highways. And they're not really going to necessarily wait for the autonomous cars and the 5G, because that's starting to look like it's maybe got a little bit of problems technologically, may get delayed. People may wake up to the privacy and surveillance issues inherent in 5G. They might wake up to the health issues inherent in it, as the people in Switzerland have. So they're going to have other types of surveillance as a backup, because when these people have a plan, and that is total surveillance of the population for total control of the population, they don't go with just one plan. These people have dates for which they want to get their plans done. Otherwise, they would be wish lists. And so they have multiple paths to get there as well. They not only have a final date, 2030, by which they want to have all this stuff in place, but they also have multiple paths to get there, backup plans. You know, it's kind of like when Barack Obama was running for president in 2012, and his big agenda, he made it clear it was going to be Obamacare. And just in case Barack Obama didn't make it, they had a backup. They had Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, both of whom were going to give you Obamacare. It's just going to be Romneycare, because there wasn't any difference between Romneycare and Obamacare. Romney had already done it in Massachusetts. Oh, where this is coming from. He'd already done it in Massachusetts with the help of Ted Kennedy. And so they were going to get that through one way or the other. And go back to NAFTA. When NAFTA was being put through, guess what? You had George H.W. Bush and you had Bill Clinton. And it didn't really matter whether you voted Republican or Democrat, you were going to get NAFTA. The only person who was opposing it at the time was Ross Perot. And of course, he was crazy, right? Now, we were crazy. We were crazy to choose somebody who was going to give us that. And so, yeah, they're going to direct the Secretary of Transportation to award $50 million in grants. And one of the things that I find interesting about this is the little acronym that he uses. These guys always love to have acronyms. It's Safe Drivers Act. It can't just be, oh, well, we're going to make sure that only safe drivers are on the road and so forth. You know, just like the Patriot Act, these things are composed of forced acronyms. And here's the little forced acronym that they have for the Safe Drivers Act. State and federal election data records to improve vehicle operator eligibility reporting systems. Now, what they're talking about is vehicle operator eligibility. That's the key word. It's turning it into a government-granted privilege. And if you don't understand how this is going to fold into the insurance industry, well, I've got that for you when we come back. Because you've got the insurance industry right there partnering with Amazon to put a little black box to spy on you in. Oh, it'll be free, you know, just like social media was free at the very beginning. Well, still is, too, yeah. It just takes away your freedom. We'll be right back. All right, so let's look at the involvement of the insurance industry in pushing this surveillance state. Because it's always a public-private partnership. There's always big companies who are profiting from the police state that they're helping to enact, just like we see Apple telling all the people who are producing entertainment for its new Netflix competitor, Apple TV Plus, don't offend the Chinese, whatever you do. Pay attention to what Hollywood is doing. Kowtow to them like the people in Hollywood are doing. And if you don't think when you go back and you look at how InfoWars has been a thorn in the side to the government, exposing their plans, opposing their plans. I mean, when they had the rollout of the body scanners for the TSA, we had on Haskell, who was on the flight, and said, I watched them put this guy on. He was totally out of it. He was, looked like a bum. And he was escorted by a guy in a suit speaking English, got him on the plane, the underwear bomber. And then miraculously, as he tried to blow himself up, and they stopped it. It wasn't much of a threat, but they stopped it. And they used that to immediately roll out to all the different airports what they'd already manufactured and warehoused and had ready to roll out, all these body scanners. They just needed a justification for it. And that was your false flag. So we exposed that. And then the first Thanksgiving after they rolled that out around Christmas, almost a year later, they're rolling it out everywhere, still putting it in some of the minor places, but we organized a boycott of the scanners, told everybody, well, this is Thanksgiving, so on the busiest travel day of the year, opt out. Tell them, no, I'm not going to go through the scanners, just, pat me down, which is what I always do when I fly. Because as annoying as that is, I want to be as much of a wrench in the machinery of the police state as I can. And so I'll go through the inconvenience of being patted down before I'll be scanned. I don't know what the biological implications of that are. I'm pretty old, probably take a while for those things to accumulate, but nevertheless, I just want to shut down the surveillance system. And so everybody was going to opt out. And guess what? On the busiest travel day of the year, TSA across the country just said, well, we won't do either one. Just go ahead and walk through. We're not going to bother checking anybody on the busiest travel day of the year. We don't care. And then by the next year, everybody had become acclimated to it. Except the government still remembered what we did. And they were talking about how they had to shut down the cannons on social media. Who do you think the cannons on social media were? Would it be the first people they took down? Us? And we had people like Tim Cook and Apple who were leading the charge in coordination with other big corporations all at the same time. Why? Because they want to do what the governments are telling them to do. That's why I'm saying the corporation, we talk about, all this censorship, that's just these individual corporations working on their own personal prejudice. And, of course, they're allowed to do that, says the Heritage Foundation and Cato Institute, these conservative and libertarian think tanks. They're allowed to censor people that they want because they own it. Because they created the digital public square and told everybody it's a digital public square. Come on in. Everything is free. Your speech is free. We're the free speech wing of the free speech party or area. And our business model is the public square. And then they can come in and say, well, no, since we own it, we're going to shut it down. And I've told you that they're doing this at the behest of the government. They're the velvet glove on the iron fist of government censorship. They're just the penultimate censors. The ultimate censors are the people at DARPA and these other organizations that are now partnering with Silicon Valley to create, specifically Microsoft, the people that are out there trying to push a global ID and universal vaccination, as I was talking about before, the big funders of Gavi. And so Microsoft is now the partner of DARPA. So they can tell you which news organizations you should listen to and which news organizations you should not. NewsGuard, that's the program, NewsGuard. And they're also going to count the votes. That's called Election Guard. And so all the stuff about President Trump and these ridiculous coups, all that is simply a PSYOP operation to get people to believe that President Trump has lost his popularity so that when they rig the election with Election Guard, you won't question the results. And we got an update on that as well, as it was exposed over the weekend that Fox News rigged that poll, saying that the majority of Republicans or the majority of people now wanted President Trump impeached. No, that was a push poll. Do you know what a push poll is? Well, it's under the pretense of a poll. People will call up the population and they'll ask them a very leading question. And they don't really care what your answer is one way or the other. They just want to push you in a particular direction by the questions, the rhetorical questions that they ask are very biased. And then, of course, the other part of it is that they want to push the entire population by telling you, well, everybody else thinks this. Why are you not in agreement with the rest of us? That is the Ash experiment from the 1960s, where people would go into a room and everybody in the room, except for the test subject, was in on the gag. And what they would do is they would give them some obvious questions. They would hold up a sheet that would have 3 lines, and one of them was obviously shorter. And they would ask people, which one is the shorter line? There it is right there. You guys are fast. Thanks for pulling that up. So they would show them something that's obvious. It's obvious that line number A is the shortest line. And yet, if everybody else in the group gave the wrong answer and were consistent in the wrong answer that they gave, after a while, anywhere from 2/3 to 80% of the people would go along with what the crowd was saying. That's peer pressure. That's the Ash experiment. That was done in the 1960s. And then, of course, there's also the Milgram experiment, where you go along with a person in authority. If they tell you to electrocute that person, torture that person with electricity, or even execute that person with electricity, you'll go along with it. And they repeated that on a game show in France, the Game of Death. They repeated it in the 1980s, and everybody went along with that as well. That's what the internet is based on. Just those two aspects of it, that and a corporate government partnership. And so how does this look when we're talking about transportation? Well, we got Nationwide, the big insurance company, is going to give away 1 million free Amazon Echo Auto devices. Now, these are little boxes designed specifically for your car, to listen to everything that you do in your car, to monitor everything that you do in your car. You don't think they're going to have GPS there? If they got GPS, they can monitor your speed as well as where you are. And they can report that back to Nationwide. Isn't that interesting? You not only have a public-private partnership, you have a partnership between corporations to screw you. And, of course, if you're going to be shopping, this is the way the ad is put out there. Oh, you can order stuff with your Amazon Echo, besides just telling it verbally what you want to hear on the radio. And so why isn't that distracted driving? Oh, it's not if it's for the profits of a corporation and the control of the government. All right, so you got Nationwide and Amazon coming together for their mutual benefit. Now, Amazon's going to get people to shop online while they're driving. No problem, of course, because it's a big company, and, you know, we don't really care if Elon Musk puts out autonomous driving or smart summons and it crashes into people and cars and parking lots. That's fine, because he's a big corporation, and there's a different standard for those people. They don't have to be safe, and their products don't have to be safe. You know, we've just had an opioid epidemic green-lighted by the FDA for over a couple of decades. Yeah, because, you know, profits. And then when it finally gets too much for the public to bear, they make a show of shutting it down. And they come hat in hand to the Sackler family and their company, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, and say, well, you know, what can you give us with this? Can you give us a little bit of money? Yeah, I tell you what, we'll cut you a little bit of a deal. Instead of the kind of treatment that they should get, which is what they did to El Chapo. It said, we're taking everything you've got. That's what the little people get, right? If you got $1,000 car in many jurisdictions like Chicago, they can stop you and say, well, I think I see a marijuana cigarette butt there. Yeah, right there. Or I smell it, or whatever. And I'm not accusing you of having anything to do with that. I'm not going to even charge you with drug possession, let alone find you guilty. I'm not even going to charge you. But your car has something to do with marijuana or something, so I'm just going to take it right now. Oh, and if you want to get it back, you're going to have to sue me, because you don't have any presumption of innocence, and neither does your car. You know, your car, why? We don't give presumption of innocence to inanimate objects, but we can charge them with committing crimes on their own, detached from their owners. That's the fiction that's been in place with civil asset forfeiture since the days of Ronald Reagan and Ed Meese as Attorney General. And we still operate by that fiction. And, oh, by the way, if you want to sue us to get your car back, you're going to have to pay $1,000 just to start the process. That's why they victimize the poor, for the most part, with these civil asset forfeiture things. But they can destroy your middle-class business as well. They can take away your home as well with that type of thing. So, we don't really care too much about due process for the little guys. And we don't really care about it for the big guys either, because they can't commit crimes. You might get a ticket if they think that you're looking at your phone when you're driving. And I don't agree with that. I think I don't like to see distracted driving. That's one of the reasons why I don't think it's okay to put more and more electronic interfaces and, iPad-type interfaces where you got to pinch and zoom and twist and interact with a touch screen, which doesn't have any tactile feedback. When in my old school cars that I've got, I don't have to take my eyes off the road. I know where those buttons are, and I can handle them without taking my eyes off the road. But you can't do that with the newer cars. I've driven them as rental cars. You've got to focus on this thing, try to get the button. It doesn't work. You got to do it a couple of times. You got to pinch. You got to zoom. You got to rotate. And there's no tactile feedback on these touchscreens. And so it is by de facto a distracted driving situation. But Amazon wants to put these things in because they would like to have greater sales. And so we're going to let them do that. No problem. And they can work with Nationwide to give away 1 million of these. And so what's in it for Nationwide? Oh, don't you think that they're going to, as they point out, they're going to leverage this technology in new and unique ways? I think they will. I think they will leverage this technology to watch everything that you're doing. When Nationwide talks about this program, they say, we're going to have a new driver's checklist. We're going to provide a safety checklist to help drivers learn safe driving habits. Oh, yes, they will probably be giving you feedback about how you drive, to make it safer. And they'll be giving feedback to the Department of Motor Vehicles and the local police to make sure that the two of them, the police and the insurance company, can turn you into a safer driver while you shop online with Amazon and play on the internet because it's all about profits and control. And so Amazon says, or Nationwide, we want members to be able to experience the Amazon Echo for automobiles, Echo Auto. Now you'll just be able to ask Alexa for your favorite Audible book, shop online, hear the morning news as long as it is the CIA-approved corporate version of the news. You'll be able to get ABC, CBS, NBC. The people have always been a part of the Operation Mockingbird press. NPR. Oh, of course it'd be NPR. I don't think if you say play the David Knight Show or InfoWars or whatever, they're not gonna refer you over to that. No, that won't happen. Be able to set a reminder to pick up groceries on the way home and so forth. And of course, Nationwide is leveraging everything in the digital world. They're just not telling you what all these new and unique ways that they're going to be controlling you are actually going to be looking like. I've got more to say about what's going on with the situation in California, how they are cracking down and how their infrastructure is collapsing there. It's not just the bankrupt PG&E. It's not just the problems that have been caused with that. And that's had some very interesting implications out there. But it's much wider than that. I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I want to talk a little bit about some coup update news. The CIA coup update. Coup number 2. Coup part 2, I guess is what we ought to call this. Coup part 2. Well, we have NBC now banning a campaign ad from President Trump's campaign about Biden and the Ukraine scandal. And since this is InfoWars, we will play for you the ad that you will not be able to see on the corporate CIA media or be able to access via your Alexa automobile ad. Here's what that ad that you won't be able to see on NBC looks like. Video clip 3.
Joe Biden promised Ukraine $1 billion if they fired the prosecutor investigating his son's company.
If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got got fired.
But when President Trump asks Ukraine to investigate corruption, the Democrats want to impeach him, and their media lapdogs fall in line. They lost the election. Now they want to steal this one. Don't let them.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Yeah, I approve that message. That's basically what I said from day one. That's very succinct. Great shot there. They got that little clip of Joe Biden talking about quid pro quo. And, of course, that's a conspiracy theory, so, you can't have that, I guess. They're not saying why President Trump is not allowed to run that ad. They gave them a list of changes that needed to be made before they would allow that ad to be run, but no information as to what those changes are. I think I know. Don't you? You got to take the truth out of there before you can run it on NBC. And this reminds me of what happened with ABC. Remember when Barack Obama was rolling out Obamacare? And you had ABC go to the White House every day as part of the nightly news. I remember it vividly. They went there every day to have Obama give his appeal for why you needed to have Obamacare and why you could keep your insurance if you liked your insurance and all those other lies. And the Republican Party at the time said, wait a minute, we demand equal time. You're just running a 10, 15-minute ad. Half of your nightly news is promoting Obamacare every day this week. And we want some equal time to respond to this. They said, no, we're not going to give it to you. And so the Republicans backed down and they said, okay, can we buy an ad then? I want to buy an ad and refute what you and Obama are telling the public. And they said, no, we won't sell you the ad time either. And here you are with this video clip that everybody has seen. And now NBC doesn't want you to see that. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's the way it's controlled. Those are the people that get the News Guard check from Microsoft and DARPA. Good little boys and girls. Not only is NBC withholding the short 30-second commercial, it's basically President Trump playing that little clip of Joe Biden bragging like a mafia boss. You fire that prosecutor. I'm going to leave it here in 6 hours. You fire that prosecutor. Son of a gun, he was fired before I left. We got $1 billion on the hook here. That's just chump change for Biden and his son, Hunter. But, can't play that. NBC is not going to allow that to be played. It's kind of interesting to go back to 2008. And Tom Brokaw said something at the time about Joe Biden and his son, Hunter, and their corruption back in 2008. Let's play that clip, video clip number 4.
Those of his son, Hunter, who is 38 years old, and that's a reference to your son being hired right out of law school by a big company here in Delaware that is in the credit card business, MBNA. He got about $100,000 a year, as I recall. You received $214,000 in campaign contributions from the company and from its employees. At the same time, you were fighting for a bankruptcy bill that MBNA really wanted to get passed through the Senate, making it much tougher for everyone to file bankruptcy. Senator Obama was opposed to the bill. Among other things, you couldn't, in fact, claim that you had a problem because of big medical bills. You voted against an amendment that would call for a warning on predatory lending. You also called for you opposed efforts to strengthen the protection of people in bankruptcy. This has been an issue that you've heard about before. Your son was working for the company at the same time. In retrospect, wasn't it inappropriate for someone like you in the middle of all this to have your son collecting money from this big credit card company while you were on the floor protecting its interest?
Absolutely not. My son graduated from Yale Law School. The starting salary in Wall Street is $140,000 a year if he went to lawyer. Options he had. He came home to work for a bank. Surprise, surprise.
Okay, so, we look at this. Was this a softball question from Tom Brokaw to Joe Biden? So that he could say, he went to Yale. Of course he's entitled to get that kind of money. Well, so how do you explain then his non-expertise in natural gas in Ukraine and his non-expertise in biometrics in China? That didn't have anything to do with corruption or influence or anything like that, did it? I mean, he must have learned all that stuff at Yale. That's why a Yale degree is so important. You become an expert on Wall Street finance. You become an expert on natural gas. You become an expert on biometric surveillance. It's just amazing what you can learn at Yale. No, it ain't what you know, it's who you know, isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, it's $100,000 to Hunter, $200,000, and you're working on a bill that this company was pushing at the time that was contrary to everything that you said you were going to do. It's just a coincidence, and he earned it. He earned it. Absolutely earned it. You know, Pat Buchanan has an editorial up. Will Biden be the first casualty of fanatical impeachment probe? I said this from day one. From day one, I said Joe Biden and Hunter Biden have a long list of corrupt dealings. And it is going to be a big part of that campaign. Remember when it was Joe Biden and everybody else? Remember when he had more support in the polls and more support from the donors than the next 5 candidates combined? And I said, don't bet on Biden, because he is a very vulnerable candidate. It didn't even have anything to do with his mental capacities. It had to do with his corruption. And when this all broke, I said, this is not primarily aimed at President Trump. That's just gravy for the DNC and the Hillary Clinton people and so forth. It is really aimed at taking Biden down. And, of course, he is going to be the first casualty of this. He's already dropped and is losing ground on a daily basis to Elizabeth Warren. That's why President Trump needs to realize that his real target is Elizabeth Warren, not Joe Biden. Joe Biden is finished. Finished. He's not only impaired in terms of mental impairment, but also so incredibly corrupt with his financial dealings. He'll never be there. I said at the very beginning, this is not something that's being leaked out by President Trump even before we saw, as soon as this broke, I said, yeah, this is CIA coming after President Trump, but they're coming after Biden as well, and coming after Biden first, because the Trump campaign would have loved to have held off on this until Biden got the nomination, believe me. And just as you saw with this video of Tom Brokaw, they're going to air early any negative stuff there and try to cover that up. But this time around, there isn't any covering up for this for Joe Biden. So Pat Buchanan asks, are the Democrats beginning to perceive Joe Biden as too risky for the nomination? Time will tell, and I think time is already told. I think time has already shown that's the case. Hunter Biden likely still has millions in China-backed investment fund. And, of course, this came out on October the 13th, came out yesterday. Hunter Biden has a 10% stake in BHR. This is the Chinese corporation there that he acquired through a company that he created with an LLC in 2017. Although his lawyer has said that Hunter Biden's stake in the company is only valued at $420,000. Only $420,000. That's chump change to these guys, right? Not to you and I, but that's only the political elites in this country. It just shows you how corrupt our country has become when the best career path to becoming a billionaire is through politics. But only $420,000. Well, factcheck.org analysis, where they're talking to Stephen Kaplan of the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. He told factcheck.org it's difficult to imagine, if not incomprehensible, that a 10% stake in those companies is only worth $420,000. And so they estimated, citing his analysis, that this would be valued at between $20 million and up to hundreds of millions of dollars over the investment lifetime. And so then, lo and behold, later in the day, breaking news yesterday that Hunter Biden says he's going to step down from the board of the Chinese equity firm after Trump had accused him of making $1.5 billion in Beijing during his father's time in office. And so that's not necessarily just that one company, BHR Shanghai Equity Investment Fund. but he is now going to resign from that board. And so now it's all good, right? It's okay. I got caught, so I'm not going to do that anymore. No, that's the way that this is going to roll. So when we look at how this is being pushed out and how the media has become complicit in this, now, again, I think one of the key objectives of this was to remove Biden. They realized that he was a damaged candidate. There may have been people within the DNC that wanted somebody else to get the nomination, either Elizabeth Warren or maybe even to encourage Hillary Clinton to get back in. I'm sure she would like to see everybody at the front taken down. Better watch your back, Democrats. But they also had, of course, the partnership of everybody in the media as part of this as well. And so we're going to talk about that when we come back. Before we do, folks, just understand that there was a partnership in the media and in the biggest companies that the world has ever seen, companies that have more customers and more cash than virtually every government on earth, and they all work together to, and how they get that, of course, is by doing whatever the Chinese government or the American government tells them to do, just as we saw in the hearings immediately following the deplatforming of InfoWars. We saw Marco Rubio saying, well, you're going to do what we tell you to do, not what the Chinese tell you to do, right? Well, they'll do what anybody tells them to do if they can make some money. And they were being told to shut down independent media. We were the first ones. 2 months later, they shut down another 800 sites. They're not finished yet. It continues. But we continue because you've been great about supporting us. And we've got some excellent products. We have a lot of natural supplements that are safe, very effective, and now extremely affordable. 40 to 70% off dozens of products. We have 50% off products. Most of the products, at the very least, some of the products are 70% off, like Survival Shield X3 Nascent Iodine, the 2-ounce bottle. We have VasoBeat, our new product that is a high-intensity beat-based product that is a vasodilator. That's now 50% off. Free shipping, double Patriot points, store-wide. We really appreciate your support, and we need your support at this time. We'll be right back. Stay with us. A little bit of a preview for tomorrow night's Democrat debate. Tax the rich, feed the poor till there's no rich no more. And then what do you do? I don't know. That's like they said, Margaret Thatcher, eventually you run out of other people's money. We're seeing that happening in California. They're actually running out of other people's energy as well. So we're going to take a look at what's going on in California as they joust at windmills and unicorn farts coming up here. But I just want to finish up with the coup part deux that we have unfolding now. It's just absolutely amazing that this continues to go on, and yet it can go on because President Trump has not stood with independent media. He's allowed the CIA, corporate government media, to reestablish their monopoly, or their oligarchy, I guess we should say, their oligarchy on the news by the control they have on social media, the internet, as well as deplatforming people. And because President Trump evidently thinks that he can go it on his own, and maybe he can. He's already spent way more money than he raised the entire time he campaigned in 2016. So maybe he can. Maybe he can get a lot of money from a lot of rich donors, and maybe he can, get heard on Twitter, or maybe Twitter will shut him down. I mean, we've already had Democrat judges say that President Trump can't block people that are offensive from his account. And yet the CEO of Twitter has the authority to basically ban President Trump altogether. So the CEO of Twitter has more power than the President of the United States, who was elected. And the Democrats are just fine with that. Democrats who hate everything about corporations, we're told. And yet they want corporations to rule speech, political speech. And they're just fine with that, as long as the corporations are ruling in their favor. That's how intellectually and morally bankrupt the left is. But when we look at how this plays out, you now got Snopes, the people that sit on couches with cats and tell us what's true and what isn't true, and have absolutely no political bias, we were told all these years. Well, now they've announced that they will fight President Trump using feelings and emotions. As a matter of fact, not just President Trump, but Boris Johnson. The two of them are so dangerous. Why would they put those two together? Well, because the two big pushbacks against the globalist agenda were the two elections in 2016. First, Brexit, then the election of President Trump. And both of those must be overturned. That's why we have these ongoing coups against the Brexit election and against the Trump election. And this is what Snopes announced last Thursday. They said that Boris Johnson and President Trump, actually the two elections that must be overturned, are such a threat to the world that experts must find new ways to reach people. And here's what they said. We're going to, quote, counter them with shared stories, experiences, and emotions of real people and how they are affected by big global issues. Well, we're going to talk about that coming up. We're going to talk about how now we have the architects, at least one of them, writing an op-ed piece on Bloomberg, one of the architects of globalism, saying, well, we've really kind of eviscerated the middle class. Sorry about that, echoing Ben Bernanke when he said, the Federal Reserve, we caused the Great Depression. Sorry about that. We won't do it again. He said that just before it happened again with the Great Recession. And so now you have other people saying, sorry that we eviscerated the middle class. Sorry about that. And Snopes is not sorry that they're going to be using the tried and true tactics of NPR and the corporate media and the Democrats. We're not going to talk about issues. We're not going to talk about principles. We're not going to talk about the Constitution. Instead, we will have people come in and tell their sob stories. And then we'll tell you how we can make it all better with this Band-Aid legislation that takes away your freedom and gives them control. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Yeah, Snopes that is repeatedly fact-checking Babylon Bee, the conservative Christian satire site. They continually fact-check them. As a matter of fact, I was attacked by the Daily Beast, pleading with Twitter, because that's the only place where I am anymore on social media. You can find me at Libertarian. You'll have to look for me because I'm pretty much already off of Twitter based on what Twitter has done, shadow banning and so forth. They haven't outright banned me, but they've so effectively capped me and capped my reach that it doesn't really matter that I'm there. But you can find my tweets. I'll still put stuff out there for anybody who wants to directly look, but that's the only way you'll find anything. But that wasn't good enough for the Daily Beast. They wanted me overtly banned, and they used my comments where I laughed about and talked about a Babylon Bee satire. They said in the midst of Elizabeth Warren bragging about the fact that she had a microscopic amount of Native American ancestry, and therefore she was legit in what she was saying, and using that as a crutch to get access to a job, both here in Texas and also with her college position at Harvard. Anyway, they were doing a satire with that, and they said, well, Hillary Clinton, in the wake of this DNA assessment that was put out by Elizabeth Warren, says, well, see, I'm not 100% reptilian DNA. I'm only 50%. And I was attacked by all these Twitter trolls over that after I was attacked by the Daily Beast. So Snopes and the Daily Beast and all these people, they take satire and they try to deplatform you. Now they've announced that they're going to fight President Trump and Boris Johnson. They're going to fight Brexit and the 2006 election here in the United States. They're going to try to overthrow that by using feelings and emotions, shared stories, experiences, and emotions, because it doesn't matter if it's satire. If it hurts your feelings to joke about the fact, if I joke about the fact that Hillary Clinton is only 50% reptilian DNA and not 100% alien reptilian DNA, if that hurts your feelings, then, that's all that really matters in this postmodernism that we have here, right? If you believe that 2 + 2 = 5, then it does for you. That's your truth. That's your math. That's the new math. There is no objective reality. And so we don't really need a fact checker like Snopes. And they're not really doing any fact checking. They're not even pretending to do fact checking. And then that brings us to Fox News. And over the weekend, you probably saw the headline on Drudge Report, how the New York Post went back and looked at the poll that was put out by Fox News. Fox News released a poll that said that 51% of registered voters want President Trump impeached. And at the time, we said, nah, I don't believe that. I believe that's going up because of the consistent, continuous lies as part of the coup part deux that we see out there. That's happening all the time, and yeah, they're going to move public opinion. And if they can put out public opinion polls that say, look, the majority of people want President Trump impeached, then when they rig the election count using Election Guard, they can rig the news that you hear using NewsGuard, Microsoft and DARPA, and then Microsoft and DARPA can rig the vote totals with Election Guard, and then everybody looks at it and says, well, yeah, but we were told even by Fox News that people don't like President Trump anymore. So Braun research revealed that the actual breakdown of a party affiliation across the board is 31% Democrats, 29% Republican, 38% independent. So you would think that if they're going to ask the poll of likely voters, that they would kind of stick to those ratios of Democrat, Republican, and independent when they total this up, but they didn't. Instead, even though party affiliation across the country is 31% Democrat, they went to 48% of their respondents as Democrat. And they didn't adjust for that either. It's almost like they had a result that they wanted to put out and make headlines with. And then they would rig the data for those results. Isn't that right? Isn't that what we call push polling? That and the kind of questions that you ask people. And the New York Post pointed out that if you went back and weighted it to make it match the political affiliation across the country, that would take it down from 51% to 44.9% of Americans who wanted impeachment for President Trump. And that 44% would oppose impeachment. So it would roughly be about the same number either way. As President Trump said at the time, whoever the pollster is, they suck, but Fox News is also much different than it used to be back in the good old days. With people like Andrew Napolitano, who wanted to be Supreme Court Justice, and I turned him down. He's been terrible ever since. And Shepard Smith, well, of course, now Shepard Smith has gone on to, I guess we could say, greener pastures. I'm sure he realized that he would be worth much more to CNN and MSNBC than he is even to Fox News. And I question whether or not he is worth $15 million a year to Fox News. But, yeah, I'm sure he could make even more than that going to MSNBC and CNN, and I'm sure that they could make it worth his while, even if with him breaking a contract, they could make it worth his while to go with them. And as I tweeted out, I think that Shep needs to go to one of those two news networks. I think he's already essentially joined them in the past. And maybe he can find the other two stooges, Mo and Curly, when he gets there. I don't know. We'll see. But the media, of course, is no longer a trusted source of information, as the World Tribune points out. Why would you trust them? Why would you trust them? Why would you trust these fact checkers? And again, I talk about Snopes, and you look at it and you say, well, I don't go to Snopes. But you know who does go to Snopes? Facebook, Twitter, social media, Google, all these people, they use them. And, of course, the government does, too. They cite them as sources, just like the Southern Poverty Law Center. They cite them as sources for people who are hateful, people who are fake news, people who, can't be relied on. Oh, these are all sources for NewsGuard and other places. So it is a big deal when Snopes admits that they're going to be actively manipulating the public narrative and not manipulating it by coming back and saying, yeah, but the facts are this. You can do that, and you can politically manipulate, as they have been doing, by being very selective about what you talk about and by misrepresenting it. And, of course, we have fact-checked the fact-checkers many times here. But now they're not even going to rely on facts. So the interesting thing is that while the majority of people no longer trust the media, when we talk about the media, we're talking about the corporate CIA media, the Mockingbird Press, Democrats still generally trust the news media. 58% of them say they trust it, at least somewhat. Only 32% say they have little or no trust. It is confirmation bias. They tell them exactly what they want to hear. And they don't listen to any other sources. They think that these sources are authoritative, just like the old days. We had ABC, CBS, NBC, all saying the same thing. Every night the news was the same. It's just, which anchor did you like better? They all chose to talk about the same topics that were given to them by the CIA. They all had exactly the same angle and perspective. It was never one of individual liberty. It was never one about American sovereignty. It was never one about whether or not the Constitution said we could even do that. No. It was all about whatever they wanted to push at the time, and they put in the context of an emotional narrative or making you safer or whatever. And, of course, if you want to be safer, you just got to give up all those freedoms. And you got to give up the Constitution because all that stuff is racist, as we're being told here on Columbus Day. It turns out that, of course, we have to give up due process, and President Trump, all the rest of us, had to give up our due process a long time ago. It sucks, doesn't it? Not having due process, not having equal protection under the law, sucks, doesn't it? It's kind of like being attacked by Fox News. Well, the rest of us have been attacked by the government many, many times. I have, most of the reporting I've done here has been focused on people who have been run through the ringer of our so-called Justice Department, and now President Trump is getting the same treatment. Don't expect him, however, to stand up for your rights. Nevertheless, it's still wrong. I don't like to see it happen to anybody. Schiff's CIA whistleblower, now we're told, may not testify in the impeachment probe at all. Yeah, he's not a whistleblower, as John Kiriakou, the real whistleblower who went to jail for exposing torture, pointed out. He's just a partisan, anonymous source. And Michael Snyder says, well, Trump could be impeached based on a parade of whistleblowers that won't even testify in person. On Friday, I talked about the Equality Town Hall that CNN had on Thursday night. I thought it was kind of interesting because it was 9 Democrat candidates groveling to the LGBT lobby. CNN did it. They did a town hall, and of course, nobody really talked. I haven't seen any ratings numbers for that, but I know in the past their town halls on the environment have been abysmally low. And they put it up against a Trump rally. Now, most people, especially Trump supporters, are not watching, and that's a good thing for the Democrats, because if you actually saw how these people were pandering to the LGBT lobby, that would basically be the end of the Democrats, not only for the presidential race, but I think for Congress as well. That's why I tried to highlight it on Friday. I said, this is what they don't want you to see. It was so bad, in fact, that Saturday Night Live did a cold opening of the CNN Equality Town Hall. Here's just the opening of that video clip number 2.
One stage, no rules. Last one standing gets the oh-so-elusive gay vote. It's the CNN Town Hall Equality in America with Anderson Cooper.
Yeah, last one standing gets the gay vote. And as they went through this, I'm not going to play the whole thing for you. It's about 10 minutes that they had of that. But even Saturday Night Live is making fun of the pandering that was going on. They have one actor playing Cory Booker. He's portrayed as a suck-up. My girlfriend was in Rent, so I get it, talking about that. And then, of course, they have Castro rolled on pandering, speaking Spanish and apologizing for not being gay and promising to do better in the future. But as you see all of this, and as Cory Booker is put on the spot, he said, you said some unkind things in the past about gay people. And he goes, well, that's a really difficult question, and I think I'm going to leave now, just that type of thing. The writing at Saturday Night Live is not really that good anymore, but when you have them making fun of the Democrats and their pandering, I think it's pretty amazing. And if that wasn't enough of a clown show, the transgender lobby, you have Chelsea and Hillary Clinton in an interview with the Sunday Times. The journalist is Decca Atkinhead, I think is what this is, UK Sunday Times. She asked them about transgender self-identification. And she was asked, she asked the two of them. First she asked Chelsea, if somebody with a beard and a penis can be a woman. And she said, yes, emphatically. Yeah. This is what the Democrat Party has come to. And this, quite frankly, is what postmodernism has come to. Again, there is no objective reality. There is no objective biology unless unless they don't like you. And then you can never escape the stigma of being a white male, no matter how hard you try. And we've seen that over and over again with these people as well. You can get somebody who thinks of himself as a progressive, socialist, Antifa, Democrat, and he tries to hang out with these people, and he can never get over the biological objective stigma of being a white male. They get called out on it. They get banned from these different, seminars that they have and so forth at the universities. No, biology matters very much to them if you're a white male. Even if you don't want to identify as that. Even if you're a Democrat and you want to identify as, being one of their preferred groups. I mean, the only person that I've seen get away with that is Beto O'Rourke. Robert Francis O'Rourke can identify as Hispanic. Even though he's as Irish as they come, he can identify as Hispanic, and they all take that seriously, except not seriously enough to give him their vote or any money. So he's not going to make it any further. He has hit the wall. He's not going anywhere else. But Chelsea Clinton, as she's there with Hillary, and, Mommy's trying to push her along for her political career. And so the two of them are there. And as Daily Mail points out, Chelsea Clinton replied emphatically yes when asked if a person with a beard and a penis can be a woman. Oh, yes. And then Hillary was struggled with that a little bit. She said, it's going to take a lot more time and effort to understand what it means to be defining yourself differently. Oh, okay. So I guess that's really clear, right? Hillary became very uneasy, said the interviewer, when the question was asked. And Chelsea shot a furious stare at the journalist as her mother answered. Hillary continued, it's a very big generational discussion because this is not something I grew up with or ever saw. Yeah, what is it about that? Where did all this stuff come from? Is it kind of being shoved on us? Is it kind of being shoved on children at a very, very young age? Way before puberty? I mean, we are chemically castrating 8-year-old boys. We're giving mastectomies to girls that are 13 and 14 years old. They should not have the kind of consent. And we recognize an age of consent, except for the pedophiles. That's why I say this is the LGBTP movement, the pedophile movement. That's what these people are really about. You really ought to call it, just drop the T and change it to a P. It's the LGBT movement, the pedophile movement. Because they want to pretend that these kids who are in elementary school, years away from puberty, have the maturity to decide what gender they want to be for the rest of their lives. Well, then, if you're going to do something that permanent, they can easily consent to having an affair with Jeffrey Epstein or Alan Dershowitz or these other people who think that the age of consent is just some kind of a cultural relic. No, it exists for a reason. It exists for a reason. We've had the big part of that equality town hall, they called it. They were pushing the Equality Act, which is what the Democrats have pushed forward to say that if you don't agree that a person with a beard and a penis can be a woman, then you need to be punished. You need to have your business taken away. You need to have your church shut down. You need to be pushed off of social media. It is discrimination. And, of course, these are the people who discriminate all the time against white males. But, that's not something you can do anything about. You can't do anything about it if you're black or female or whatever, right? That's why they didn't have, that's why they put the Discrimination Act in there. But they're now trying to extend that definition of sex to a non-objective, non-biological definition of gender. And if they do that, they're going to shut down all free speech. They're going to shut down all free exercise of religion. They will shut down the First Amendment. And that's what the Democrats were talking about. They were all bragging about how they were going to punish churches. And President Trump had something to say about that over the weekend at the Value Voters Summit. We'll have that when we come back. Stay with us. As we hear the music from John Wayne's Alamo, just understand that in California, the California University there, where they He once attended University of Southern California. They have some monuments to John Wayne, and they want to get rid of that because of his legacy of white supremacy. As a matter of fact, we had Sam Donaldson coming out and saying, these Trump supporters, they want a white Christian America. Is there a problem with that? I mean, it's a virtue, right? If we say we want a non-white, non-Christian America, that'd be a good thing, right? Well, maybe you want that. And maybe some of us would like to have a Christian America. And maybe we don't want to get rid of John Wayne. I certainly don't. Maybe some of you don't want that either. But of course, you have to understand that's what these people want. Trump supporters have a fixation of a white Christian country. I'm sure male as well, right? It's got to be all male. No females allowed in Trump country, right? According to Sam Donaldson. This guy, I thought he was dead. It's like Snake Plissken, right? Except not as cool. It's like, Sam Donaldson, I thought you were dead, man. He's coming out of the grave to attack President Trump and Trump supporters, the guy who was constantly there attacking Ronald Reagan all the time. Franklin Graham said on Saturday at the, I think this is at the Value Voters Summit, he said, I will not worship the rainbow pride flag. And I've been saying this all along. This is about a religion that is being established. It is a secular religion, a secular humanist religion, but it is a religion. It has a system of beliefs. It has a system, just like any religious creed. You say, we affirm and we deny this and that. And that's what these people are all about. And that was what was on parade at the CNN Equality Town Hall. Even Reason Magazine, even the libertarians came out and summarized this CNN Equality Town Hall. It's not about equality at all. I've said many times, you look at the mottos of the French Revolution, the Socialist Revolution, fraternity, liberty, equality. Well, you can't have all three of them. They're mutually exclusive. You can have fraternity with either of those two, but you can't have liberty and equality, not the way that they define it. You can have equality under the law, but we don't have anything like that. I mean, we can see that from individual enemies of the state all the way up to the president as an enemy of the state. You don't get any due process. You have a different system of justice. You're not going to be allowed to know who your accusers are. You're not going to be allowed to confront them in public. You're not going to be allowed to see evidence that could clear you. No. I've seen that happen over and over again to people, and now it's happening to President Trump. So you're not going to have any equality under the law. We got one system of justice for Hillary Clinton and another one for Christian Saucier, the sailor who took a picture of his bunk on his submarine and went to jail for it. But Hillary Clinton, she can commit multiple felonies. She can violate national security at above top secret level an infinite number of times. No problem. It's not in our interest to do anything about that. So we don't have equality under the law. But what the socialists always want to do is give you equality of results. And to do that, they have to take away all of your freedom. It is a Harrison Bergeron society, as Kurt Vonnegut put it out. And so Reason Magazine kind of seizes on that. Democrat candidates promise LGBT voters that they'll punish all the people, all the right people, but it'll be all the people. And they have a subtitle, a Department of Justice lawyer in every pot. And that pretty much sums it up. The 9 Democrat candidates on that town hall that CNN was very happy that you weren't watching because you're watching the Trump rally if you're watching any news or you're doing something else. They're very happy that you didn't see that. Because even Reason Magazine, that is very sympathetic to the gay agenda, I mean, they're not looking at this and saying, wow, they're attacking churches. We don't like it because they're attacking Christianity. No, they don't care about that. But they're looking at this and saying, why is it that every problem has to be followed up with some kind of a federal program? Almost every answer to every questioner featured a call for more federal involvement in people's lives. That bottom line was their objection. And they summed it up. They said, kept asking these questions. What are you going to do about hate crimes? Well, we'll unleash the Department of Justice against everybody. Everybody that we say commits a hate crime. What will you do about people who use religious beliefs to justify discriminating against LGBT people? Because that's it. See, nobody has any sincerely held religious beliefs except for the LGBT crowd. If you have any belief systems that conflict with them, you're simply using that to discriminate against these people because you're a hateful bigot and we hate you. And we're going to use the federal government against you in every way possible. No, we won't let them. We will strip churches and nonprofits of their tax-exempt status if they try. We'll find other ways to punish them as well, just as we have Chick-fil-A. What was Chick-fil-A's big crime? Oh, they were never even accused of discriminating against anybody. They don't ask what your sexual orientation is and when you go to get a chicken sandwich. But they had the audacity to give money to the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army is a Christian organization that believes what the Bible says about marriage, that it's between one man and one woman, and that God created man, male, and female. He didn't create 52 different genders. And so they're a hate organization, and they have to be shut down. And if you give money to a hate organization, you, by extension, are guilty by association, and you have to be shut down as well. What are they going to do about conversion therapy? Oh, they'll ban it, of course. In other words, as Reason Magazine summed it up, tell us who did you wrong, and we will punish them using the Department of Justice. The federal government is going to come in and right all of the wrongs. Well, we talk about using the Department of Justice as a way to punish people. Attorney General Barr had a great summary of where these people are. Let's play video clip number 1.
Among the militant secularists are many so-called progressives. But where is the progress? We are told we are living in a post-Christian era. But what has replaced the Judeo-Christian moral system? What is it that can fill the spiritual void in the hearts of the individual person? And what is the system of values that can sustain human social life? The fact is that no secular creed has emerged capable of performing the role of religion. This is not decay. This is organized destruction. Secularists and their allies have marshaled all the forces of mass communication, popular culture, the entertainment industry, and academia in an unremitting assault on religion and traditional values.
Boy, that is 100% correct. Give that man a gold star. I've criticized Attorney General Barr because of things that he's done and hasn't done, and hopefully he will follow through on that. I mean, it's one thing for politicians to identify with your understanding of what the problem is, and it's another thing for them to do anything about it. But boy, that is the most succinct statement of what the problem is. This is not decay. This is not progressivism. There is no progress. This is organized destruction, said Attorney General Barr. That is a very, very powerful, very, very accurate statement. And, of course, President Trump on Saturday spoke to the Value Voters Summit, about 3,000 people. These are organizations that are essentially looking at Christian issues of religious liberty, traditional marriage, sanctity of life, limited government, and so forth. And he had a rebuttal to the Democrats on Thursday night who promised to use the Department of Justice against everybody that they hate. First they call you hateful, and then they unleash the federal government against you, as Attorney General Barr was just saying. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Again, President Trump was at the Value Voters Summit this Saturday, about 3,000 people there. Just 2 days after the town hall that CNN put very quietly and not very visibly at the bottom of their website. Everybody else that was talking about it were people who were astonished at what was said. Not too many people actually watched it. CNN didn't really want you to pay much attention to it. It was actually parodied by Saturday Night Live, the pandering that was going on there, as Reason Magazine even pointed out. Very friendly to the gay agenda, but they said, so here we have the Democrats promising anybody that you hate, we're going to use the Department of Justice against them, and you just heard Attorney General Barr say that this is not progress. This is active deconstruction. They choose to destroy Christianity, and they have nothing to replace it with. Well, they replaced it for a long time with secular humanism. Secular humanism that says that humans are God. That's why when I look at the kind of stuff that Buttigieg is putting out, and again, I'm sure he probably just hasn't thought of that as a nickname yet, because he is trying to trade on his gay credentials. So I would imagine to call himself Buttigieg, since his name is so hard to pronounce, I just went with that because, it's a term of endearment for Pete, Mayor Pete. I could call him Mayor Pee-wee. He reminds me of Pee-wee Herman, but nevertheless, Buttigieg talks about how, there's the Bible just is ambiguous about when life begins. No, it isn't. I read to you the passage that his brother-in-law went on with Tucker Carlson, and said, read this in the Psalms. Talks about how you knew me before I was born. You formed me in my mother's womb. This is a personal God that is directly involved in our creation, that understands us as a human being and sees us as a human being before we're born. That is the personhood that they try to deny. As a matter of fact, you now have abortionists that are out there saying, yeah, I kill babies. And it's like, what? You're not supposed to say they're babies. You're supposed to call them fetuses. No, I kill babies. They're human. They're not. What do you think? They're going to... We had the D.C. abortionist. He's a black man who's basically joining the war against his own people, created by Margaret Sanger. And he was saying, yeah, they're humans. What do you think? They're going to grow up and become a giraffe or something? No, they're humans. They're just not persons. Oh, we're going to play that game, right? The same game that was played as part of the slavery debate. Yeah. Oh, yeah, those black slaves are not 100% persons. Those babies, they're not persons either. As a matter of fact, we've got a lot of people on the Democrat side that call themselves ethicists that say you don't become a person until you don't reach personhood until you get to be 3 years old. So you could presumably kill all these kids up to that age. And when Buttigieg goes in and talks about, well, there's a lot of parts of the Bible which talk about how life begins with breath. No, I don't think so. Don't think so. As a matter of fact, if that was the defining line, however, Buttigieg, then what are you going to say to all these people like the governor of Virginia and the governor of New York who are killing babies who survive abortions? They call it comfort care, but they're killing babies who are capable of surviving on their own, who are breathing on their own. They put them off on the table until they die. So you can't even lie consistently. That's the problem. That's the problem with being a liar, Pete. It's just so hard to be consistent about that. Why don't you just be honest and say you don't give a damn about what the Bible says? Why do you have to twist it to say what you want it to say? Why don't you just have the guts to say, I'm going to do whatever I want. I don't believe there's a God, and I don't believe I'll ever be punished for any of this stuff. And there's nobody going to tell me what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. Why don't you just have the courage to say that, Democrats? Instead, you got to pretend that the Bible supports what you do. Stop the pretending. We all see the fraud here. The reason he's doing this is because he wants to be JC. And that's not Jesus Christ, that's Jimmy Carter. He thinks that he can become the moral embodiment. He says, oh, these people, they think that President Trump is so immoral. Well, I will be the moral guideline for them. I'll be like a Jimmy Carter. And that was the way the media sold him at the time. But have you heard Jimmy Carter say anything to push back against abortion? No, not in his term. Have you heard him push back against any of this pedophile agenda, the LGBT agenda, coming after kids in kindergarten, early years of elementary school, to gaslight them about gender, to get them to have life-altering, permanent alterations to themselves that they will most likely regret as they get to be older. We've had many people now who are gay talking about that, talking about how they regret that. And so you have Franklin Graham saying, I will not worship the rainbow pride flag. I will not bow down at the altar of the LGBTQ agenda. It is a religion. They demand that you not, they don't want tolerance, as I've said many times. They want celebration. It isn't enough that you tolerate what they do. Toleration means I don't agree with what you're doing, but I'm not going to say anything about it. That's your business as an adult. But they're not focusing on consenting adults. And they are demanding that you celebrate what they choose to do. Now, the Muslims are not falling in for this. Remember, back in the spring, you had in the UK one school district, and the Muslims showed us how it's done, quite frankly. They said, you're not doing that to my kids. You're not going to push this LGBT agenda on our kids. About 600 Muslim children aged between 4 and 11 were withdrawn from school. And when they did that, the Birmingham, UK school district folded, and they stopped pushing that agenda on their kids. Why don't we do that? I mean, you don't want to take responsibility for your kids' education? You won't even take them out for a day? You're just going to turn them over to these pedophiles to be gaslighted? It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing when we look at it. We look at what is happening in California with this power blackout. One of the interesting things is, as I talked about last week, they've got so much of a glut of solar power that they're paying Arizona and other states to take their solar power from them because they don't have a way to hook it into the grid and effectively use it. And so they're passing it off to other places. Now, part of that is because they're getting these peak amounts of power fed into the grid because they have subsidized people putting in solar power systems. And now, as they shut the power down, these people who have solar power, and they got subsidized from the government in order to put it in, they found that, guess what? Their solar power doesn't do them any good because they don't have a battery system. This is the fundamental flaw. We're trying to do this all through the grid. If you don't have a battery, if you have, it's done on an off-the-grid type of situation where you're just providing power for yourself. It's expensive, but you can get a battery backup situation, and you can get off the grid, and you can store the power in the batteries and so forth. It may not be economical to do that. That's why most people don't do it, because of the battery technology. But if you hook this up and you get a subsidy from the power company to feed it into the grid, then you're not going to have any power when the grid shuts down. And the grid doesn't have the capability to store the vast amounts of power that are going to be coming and going through the renewable and variable energy sources like solar and wind. And that's the fundamental flaw behind all of this. So people who didn't have the solar panels with batteries still don't have any power. Solar panels will be mandatory on all new homes in California next year, but not with batteries. It isn't going to help the situation. This is why this is fundamentally not even a PG&E problem. You know, they've gone bankrupt and their stock has taken a big hit. It took a one-day drop of 32% because of the problems that they're having. But it's not just mismanagement from PG&E. The mismanagement begins with the California government because they're incentivizing stuff like solar panels on your roof, but then you don't have to have batteries. This is the insanity, and I've got more to say about this, but I don't have enough time, unfortunately. I'll pick up on it again tomorrow because some very interesting things are happening there with electric cars in the wake of losing all the electric power. But, folks, just want to remind you about the sales that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. We have 40 to 70% off of dozens of products. We have free shipping, store-wide, and double Patriot points. We have some of your favorite supplements, things like Brain Force Plus, Survival Shield X2, Turbo Force, 50% off. The toothpaste, 50% off. Free shipping store-wide, double Patriot points. Some of the items are up to 70% off. That's it for our program. Thank you for listening.